Hi, Danny Hester here at Gold's Gym, the Mecca. We're up in the posing room where it's nice and quiet, and we're gonna do some shoulders today. Hopefully you can get something out of it and I get a good workout. Let's get going. I think I gradually started training with the weights because I was a gymnast, did martial arts, and I was getting older. I got a little bit more size put on, just the natural maturity of aging as a male. I think when the testosterone started kicking in a little bit, I would have to say probably around 13 or 14, I started getting more into weightlifting because I saw it, improve my strength and everything else I wanted to do for athletics. But I also really appreciated the aesthetic part of it, where it would just put a little more size on certain areas I would, concentrate on, like, did a little bit of weighted pull-ups and, just a little bit of bench press, aside from when I used to just use body weight all the time, from when I was younger. So adding the weight really helped me realize that I can sculpt my body specifically for the look I wanted. When you're growing up, you're looking at action figures and cartoons and stuff, and they used to make them just like bodybuilders back then, classic bodybuilders, So that really kind of inspired and motivated me to kind of look like that. I'd have to say my early training would be probably just watching a lot of, my neighbors and stuff like that. Friends come over, the older guys, when they'd be in the garage just talking and hanging out, and they'd be, lifting. They'd had some like weeder, old school bench press and dumbbells, I think that every teenager had, and they were in high school and in college, and just admired, like, the camaraderie of the guys that were working out, and just kind of BSing and hanging out and training. So that was kind of part of it, and I'm glad it was more that of influence, and it kind of made me steer into bodybuilding because there was camaraderie there and everything around the weights, rather than being something negative, like smoking cigarettes and hanging out, things like that. So I'm very lucky that I had that environment growing up, and it really motivated me to be that way, as far as like improve myself and help others improve themselves. I think probably the main bodybuilder that I could remember when I was a freshman in high school would have to be Muhammad Makawi, Makawa, I believe you pronounce it. And he was one of the physiques that was very similar to mine. Wasn't a big guy, but just really balanced and defined, and his charisma, you can see even just off of the pages of the magazines, really jumped out at you. He was like almost like an action figure, and that's, I would have to say that's one of the main influences that I had as far as bodybuilders when I was young. Yeah, definitely living in California, Southern California, gave me an advantage over, a lot of guys in the East Coast or areas that weren't as sunny. California, in the wintertime, you can go jogging with your shirt off, and being young, I always tried, since I was lean and trying to get in shape, I was always having a reason to have my shirt off. If I could go to church with my shirt off without getting in trouble from my mom, I probably would have. So I just always remember, being sunny and taking my shirt off anytime I can and just getting some sun and exercising. It was always physical, so staying in shape was just part of the lifestyle. And I would have to say coming to Gold's Venice had to do with the magazines I would see, as soon as I could drive a car, or, had a girlfriend that was older that can drive, when I was like 14 or 15, I'd convince them to come out to Gold's Venice and just hang out. And I remember I used to stand right there with the gates. They used to have the gates here at Gold's Venice. I had to say probably like 1987, 88, right when I was in high school, just graduating. We used to come here and stand right in front and just watch all the pros and everything. And eventually made friends with them, and a lot of them invited me to, come out and train, and realized, hey, these guys are in the magazines, and, they work hard, and there's not really any secrets, but just putting your time in. I realized a lot of them were older. There wasn't a lot of guys that were real young, I think the guys are a little bit younger these days that are coming up in the sport. And I think it's just because of the knowledge and everything too, and probably social media. So, but back then, I realized that there wasn't a lot of secrets. You just had to put your time in, and I didn't mind because, I love the lifestyle, and I saw myself doing it for the rest of my life. Yeah, I would have to say, there's quite a few different influences as far as, when I was starting to train and had a vision in my head of what I wanted to look like. I think it was in high school. It had to have been, obviously, back then it was called the WWF. There was the Macho Man. There's definitely, I would have to say, a big influence was the Ultimate Warrior. That guy was jacked. But he was balanced. He had a small waist, huge, crazy shoulders, abs. He actually had a similar build to Gary Stridham, but a tighter version, and very athletic. Obviously, he had to jump around and slam guys that are 300 pounds. That, and I would have to say the cartoons like Tarzan and Superman and things like that. Not necessarily the Incredible Hulk. That wasn't my bone structure or anything. And a lot of the martial arts guys. A little bit later on, it'd be guys like actually Jean-Claude, which is a friend of mine. It's interesting how people you are influenced by and you get to meet. That's another benefit of being out here in LA is hopefully I can influence other people like I influence myself. But the body types I used to draw was really balanced, and I don't actually think I've achieved that yet. I think being a bodybuilder, you're always going to say that. But there's just little areas. I'm close. Actually, I look back when I was a middleweight and I won the Cal. If I held a little bit less water and just a little fullness in certain areas, that was pretty close, man. It's kind of weird. You'd think looking back that far, back in the 90s, probably around 93, 94, and I had a good influence. I was trying to flex Wheeler back then, Lee Priest and all those guys. So, I think I was more mentally trying to achieve that back then than just up to recently than I was. This new Classic came along, and now I kind of got that thought back in my head as far as, okay, not just training just to be strong and look good, but there's actually a certain look that I need to get back, like when I was young, that I used to think of. And I'm getting pretty close. There's a few things. I would have to say, maybe the next Olympia I might look that way. So it's going to be exciting. I think if I would have pushed just raw mass, I would possibly have achieved it to a certain degree, but I think the longevity, the healthy aspect of it, and where I'm at this point in my career and my fitness life, I think I probably would have burnt out a lot sooner. And when I mean burnout, I'm talking about injuries, waist getting a little thicker, burning out your endocrine system. It's just my body still responds. Honestly, it still responds like when I was in my 20s. It's pretty cool. It's amazing. And I'm just blessed that I saw that very early on and was, really fortunate to be in a place like this where you see every type of body, coming through this place and at the top level. And I've been here long enough where I got to see the end result after they've retired and, moved on with their fitness and, what they look like. And it really gave me a good insight on, what I wanted to do. And it's about the long game for me. And I think a lot of these younger guys, I think with the Classic, division, I think these younger guys are starting to realize that now. Going balls to the wall and hitting the nitrous hard will take you very far, but, very fast, I would say. Very far, you're not going to go as far as just a steady course, man. It's all about improvement. You got the rest of your life. I want to be like this when I'm 80. I want to be like Robbie Robinson. Man, that guy, he's shredded right now. He's always on point with his nutrition and his training. He's just a mellow dude, just lives it. And he's like 70-something years old, and he could probably stand up on Olympia stage as the Classic. You know, it's just amazing. So that's something that I try to emulate, you know. So hopefully I'll be healthy and can influence others to go that route. I think if I would have chased the mass back in the day when I was really climbing, you know, I got to the national levels really fast. Like I say, I don't think I've ever placed in all of my shows, and I did a lot of shows, a lot of amateur shows. I've never placed out of the top 3, you know. So for me, it was about just being aesthetic and being the people's champion and enjoying the sport, not so much the win. But I think if I would have went after the win and really went after just putting on the mass, because the knowledge and you know, the access was there. I'm here at Gold's Venice. There's the best in the world and they've done it. So I definitely know I could have been a top contender, you know, up there with a lot of the guys, and I just barely missed my window. I might have been a little bit more tempted if it would have been like 5 years before, you know, because they were still letting guys like Labrada and Benfato and those guys place in the top 5 or so at the Olympia against monsters, because it was about aesthetics back then. And genetically, I guarantee you, I'm very confident I could have did very well if I just would have went balls to the wall. But then again, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now as Classic Mr. Olympia if that was the case. So I would rather have my dessert later in life than early on in life, because you mature and you just appreciate it so much more. And you know, it's not like what's next. If you get something so early, you're like, what's next? And it's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's a little depressing if you ask me. It's always nice to have a goal and you kind of, you know, meet people and get the camaraderie and you get the experiences, and then to be rewarded at, you know, later on is just awesome. It's such a great feeling, and you appreciate it, and you're not as competitive. You appreciate it and you want to give back, because you know that's going to be your legacy, is what you've achieved and what you're giving back. That's how people are going to remember you. Thanks for joining us at MD. Hope you loved the videos. This is Danny Hester, Classic Mr. Olympia. Catch you next time.